So if you wouldn't mind just to start off by introducing yourself.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much, Jenna, for having me. My name's Jen Vermet. I am a content creator. I have a weekly newsletter called Letters from a Learn It All. I have been in media for the past year and a half or two. I don't really know when I started, but I officially started my newsletter a year and a half ago, where I publish weekly and used to write daily. And I've been started my own agency last year in media where I help ghostwrite for podcasts. I also help manage online courses and yeah, produce a podcast as well. So yeah, happy to be here. I do a lot of different things in media, and it's been really exciting time to be a part of it.
And how did you find your way to this topic of curiosity is something that you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, so curiosity is something I think is at the core of learning. And I believe that when you never stop learning, you're young forever. So I think that the two go hand in hand. And with the brand of being a learn it all instead of a know it all, I really just see that as a skill that everyone needs to really lean into and cultivate in order to have that longevity of different things you're interested in for the rest of your life. So, yeah, curiosity has just been something that it is something I'm really grateful for in my life. I don't know where I'd be in life without curiosity.
Yeah. Um, and so how does that play out in the media world, the creator economy? How do you think about curiosity in the context of the media landscape today?
Yeah, I think a lot of creators start out not knowing exactly where they want to start out. So they have a very experimental mindset of not knowing what they don't know. So they have more of this interest curiosity where they're exploring. And like for me, last year I tried to start a YouTube channel. I have this blog. I've been thinking about a podcast for a long time because I love talking and connecting with people. But I think a lot of it goes down to doing little experiments of what type of media fits like what type of thing you want to create and also what brings you joy while you're creating it. Because like for me with YouTube, I didn't really find video editing enjoyable, and lots of it is video editing. So I was like thinking about the long term, and I was like, if I'm not going to be in this for the long term, I kind of want to do a small experiment and figure out whether I like it and what I don't like, and then kind of recalibrate from what I did like and how can I double down on that and get rid of what I didn't like. So that's I think how curiosity plays into the media landscape.
Yeah. And you mentioned the archaeologist
Yeah,
metaphor before. Can you
yeah.
reshare that with the class?
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of individuals, when they get into content creation, they keep thinking, I want to be the writing guy or the study habits person. Or I have friends who, like David Perel and Ali Abdal, who have done that and they start in one niche. But when you stay in that one niche as an architect who really thinks, I'm going to build this mansion of like tips around how to be a yogi or something, and only one thing, you can build a lot of followers from having that value add. But when you kind of get maybe a little boring, you get bored of it in the longer term, and then you burn out of actually creating more content around that. So I think I'm taking more of the approach that my friend Michael Ashcroft has told me about, being more of an archaeologist, where you just keep chipping away and you don't really know what you're going to find, but you just keep following that intrinsic interest in what you want to explore. And then you'll find eventually like what your brand is and what your niche is without trying to force one shoe. But with this archaeologist approach, there is this caveat of like sometimes you really have to have a long-term approach of what like when you'll start to see some momentum and followers or like a following, because there's not going to be that immediate value add for your audience if you're going around with like 20 different interests. I would say try to narrow down to like a couple of tools that you're chipping away trying to find the dinosaur, but it's very intimidating to try to build be an architect and build the whole house plan when you don't even know how to put the plaster on the bricks to even build the foundation of what you're building because you don't know what you're building.
Yeah. So what has that journey looked like for you? How have you
Yeah,
started chipping away at things
yeah.
and how have you sort of brought your audience along with you on that journey?
Yeah, I think it goes back to my core value of authenticity. I really think if I'm honest with my audience of where I am and I don't lie to them about really trying to fit a shoe or something along that line, I really try to write about what I'm excited about. And that changes drastically a lot. But whenever I write what I'm excited about, that tends to be something that my audience can tell it's like my energy's in it, and just following that energy has been something that allows me to follow more of my curiosity and keep my following up to speed with my life and just kind of what's going on, because I kind of always just tell myself that we're all works in progress and we all don't have it figured out. We're all learned adults in a way, whether we know it or not. But I really just try to lean into being a learn it all rather than a know it all, and just really try to relate that we're all human and we change our minds, and that's okay to change your mind. If you writing something that you don't really want to finish, you read a book that you don't want to finish
Mm.
reading, just kind of move on and know that your curiosity, you can trust it, wherever it takes you.
Yeah. It's also, it seems like you're being vulnerable with your audience in a
Mm,
way. How does that factor into the content you
yeah.
create?
Yeah, definitely. So I like a little bit, this is a longer story, but after college, I got a reading tutor and I got very interested in what dyslexia means and learning disabilities. And when I started to learn more about dyslexia and opening up to others about my story and trying to find other dyslexics in my life, because I found out when I was 20 in the middle of college that I have dyslexia, and it was really a hit to my self-esteem and my ego and a lot of things about just being a straight A student and then feeling like I'm illiterate, and a lot of these things that are really hard used to be really challenging for me to open up about. But after writing a blog about it, getting feedback from friends on it, and really understanding like how our differences don't hold us back, they can propel us forward and bring us closer, and just embracing your humanity is something that has helped me figure out how to have deeper connections with people that I meet on the internet, that like they read something about you on a screen, and it's a very cold medium. It's not like a hug in person in real life. So
Mm.
it's really hard to find that personal touch. But I think through sharing more vulnerability, and like I love Brene Brown and following her work around how vulnerability is courageous and it's not a weakness, it's really strength to have vulnerability, is something that I really lean onto. And it's intimidating to do, but I promise that the more you do it, the more um, you'll make deeper connections with internet friends that can change your life. I've had some of them become my clients, my best friends, how I've gotten a job to move across the world to Hawaii. This all happened from being vulnerable online, and the internet can create serendipity and magic, and it did for me. I think it can for everyone.
Wow, that's so great. Um, so to that point, tell me a little bit more about who your audience is, how you found them, why people are coming to you, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah, I think so. This is a great question. I actually really want to do a poll on like who my audience is, because I really feel like I can always get to know them better. But I think a lot of them are individuals. I've taken about 10 online courses since leaving college over the last 3 years, and many of them they subscribe to my newsletter knowing that they'll learn something new that they didn't know before. And that's something, it's really broad, but I think a lot of them, there's no age range specifically, especially because I'm a writing teacher online and my students range from 16 to 76. So it's a very wide range of age, which I really love, because my biggest role model in life was my grandma Omi, and she passed of Alzheimer's a year and a half ago. And she had some of the most curiosity in the world, and she was 90 years old, losing her mind to a disease. And that didn't hold her back though. So I really like how I have a wide range of age, and I wouldn't want to narrow down on that. But I also don't know. Um, I think usually they have they have a wide range of interests, and they don't know what they are interested in yet. But I try to help lead them through my own intuition and just kind of sharing what I'm curious about, and then maybe they'll be curious about it as well. So that's not a very narrow audience, but that's what I know about them so far.
Yeah. That's a good point about doing one of the lessons we're going to cover is about how to do audience research. So how to find
Mm,
an audience and how to how to learn about them once you have an audience. So have you done anything to actively go out and find subscribers beyond the courses you've taught or taken?
yeah. I distribute my newsletter onto Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn, and I just kind of give a blurb summary of what I write about and the value add of what they could learn from reading it. Um, but apart from that, of how to really actively grow my audience, I haven't taken the most active pursuit in it. And I think a part of that is because I really write and share for my own personal enjoyment. Like even now I'm read newsletters from a year ago that I wrote, and it's a much more, it's kind of a selfish approach, but I feel like in a way it's just as rewarding for me to write them as it is for me to my future self to read them again. So I could take a more active approach in growing my audience, but I think there's this kind of niche where if your audience, I'm a little intimidated, if your audience grows very largely, then it's really hard to feel like you can be vulnerable with an audience that is really large. So I kind of like the more baby step approach of organically meeting individuals and like allowing them to like genuinely be interested in what I write about rather than trying to be after some metric that doesn't really feel like something I'm really, that's not why I'm creating content. I'm really creating content to have like my 100 big fans versus the 1,000 big fans. I don't really think I want 1,000 big fans. Like that sounds intimidating, and I'd have to have a lot of shield on, and like I don't really want to have a huge shield. I'd rather just be able to be more vulnerable and open with my audience.
Mhm. But I know you also said you were a finance major as an
Yeah.
undergrad. So how do you think about that from a monetization perspective? Do you see your newsletter and your content as something that you can or would like to monetize?
Yeah. This has been something I really do like want to monetize. That'd be lovely to, I know the saying goes, if you follow your passion, or if you love your work, you never work a day in your life. But I don't know. I think I'm really trying to play the long game and be patient, and know that the followers I'm building, that they'll support me in my choices. And I have, hypothetically, I took this course creator. Um, it was a fellowship about a few months ago, and I was thinking of, I did a beta workshop of journaling because journaling changed my life, and potentially selling a product or service through my audience, but never charging them for reading my content. I don't see that as like, I don't see that as a very authentic way to build a following. Like, I'd rather really have people read my content enough to immediately buy it, because then I feel like my tone of voice would become much more salesy, and I'm not a salesman or saleswoman. So I'm not very tempted to do that, though I do have friends with paywalls for part of their content. And that's maybe something I could reach for in the next year or two, but I'm not trying to accelerate my monetization strategy, because I'd really just rather try to find who my audience is, get to know them and why they enjoy my content. And then I have a more narrow window and like understand who they are and how I can sell to them in a way that doesn't lie to myself of being authentic in my brand.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense and was
Yeah.
very well put. Um,
Thank you.
So, for students in this class, they're just starting out. They're on this journey of trying to figure out what they're
Yeah.
curious about, what they're interested in, and then that sweet spot, as you described it, between something that's going to bring you enough joy and keep your interest long enough that you don't get burned out or don't get sick of creating content around that area. What are some tips or advice or things that students should be doing to kind of get started down that path?
Yeah, I think something that a lot of creators get in their way while they're beginning is, it's kind of a buzzword nowadays, but the imposter syndrome of really feeling like, who am I to call myself a writer or a blogger or a YouTuber or a podcaster? And I mean, I still deal with it every day. It never goes away. So it's really humbling to know that some of the biggest content creators that I look up to, who are like my heroes, that they admit to having this little pest on their shoulder that like Stephen Pressfield would call the resistance, or Seth Godin calls it the lizard brain. And this little thing is always telling us we're not worthy of what we're creating. And so I think my biggest advice to someone trying to get started is just recognize, like maybe call it whatever you want. I call mine Cruella de Vil, but I kind of just journal and I shut her down. I'm like, let me create what I want to create for the pure reason of knowing I enjoy it and I'm curious about it, and that's enough. I don't need to have some big outcome that I'm aiming for. I really just want to follow what I'm interested in. And I think of where to start if you don't know what your niche is just to remember the biggest way that has helped me overcome my imposter syndrome is just knowing I'm an expert in what I've already lived. So storytelling is a really unique thing that brings all of the humanity together in the world. So if you can tell a story around something that you've experienced, it's your experience, you're an expert in your knowledge. No one can ever take that away from you. So really leverage what you're an expert in, which is your experience, and kind of just think about, be more reflective on your life and start to write about whether you're podcasting, doing a video. It always starts with writing something out on a first draft. You don't have to be a writer, but in a way, all creators are writers. So start out doing just a brainstorm of like what excites you and what you would love to talk to others about. If you were at a bar or like at a party, what would you want to like talk about to friends and family? What would people lean in and want to hear more about? And just follow that kind of, oh, what do I already have an audience in my life around? And that's probably something that you should start. And you don't have to stay there forever. That's just the starting point, and you can pivot from there to wherever you want to go.
Mm. You also in the piece I'm going to be assigning, you talk
Yeah,
about asking questions and having conversations. Can you
yeah.
maybe share some examples of how those two things have helped you in your process?
Definitely. So yeah, it's a good thing. Good. Thank you for bringing that up. I definitely think that asking more questions, having conversations. So with the first one of asking more questions, I think I used to have a fixed mindset around kind of having more of this introverted personality, being more shy, not knowing what am I going to say to someone if I'm on the spotlight, they're asking me questions. But in a way, I've realized if I reach out to interesting individuals on Twitter or LinkedIn, or I find their emails and I email them, it's really easy to, it's rewarding not only for you to ask them questions and build that connection, but it's also rewarding for them that if you ask them good questions, they'll really respect that and they'll admire your curiosity and they'll see that trait in you. And then it will help leverage and harness your relationship in the longer term if you always come from an authentic lens of what you're really curious about from their career or whatever they've done in their life that you really want to hear more about. And then as for having conversations, I think that when I left the finance industry 3 years ago, I started writing this book that I finished the manuscript via Learn It All, and I never got to writing the conclusion. It's still going to be written someday, but it was too big of a project, and I wanted to start smaller and build a habit and routine of writing, and that's what my newsletter is for. But having conversations, I ended up reaching out to a lot of different people in different industries and would ask them to interview them and just really just would say I wanted a conversation. And usually if I came from a very honest perspective of where I'm coming from and why I'm interested in them, that is something that usually people were very open to saying yes to. And if they don't say yes, at least know that that's the worst thing that can happen. Whenever you're doing something scary online, just ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen? And if the worst thing isn't that bad and it's just a little bit of a rejection of being ghosted, like it's not that bad. There's so many people in the world to connect with. Like just shake it off. Know that there's rejection is a part of life. And I've reached out to so many people and not heard back. And just like you build more of that shield for yourself, but then in the future when people do respond to you, you'll start to recognize how you can pay it forward and respond to other people as well. So that's just how it goes in life.
Yeah. I actually think I'm gonna add that as an assignment for the class, for the students to interview a creator that they admire, or yeah, someone that they think that will help them in their journey. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great assignment. Cold email and do it's just something that builds a little bit more courage because it can be daunting out there.
Mhm. Um, well, great. Um, the other thing that I liked from your piece, you talked about reading an unfamiliar book or something outside the realm of what you usually read. Can you
Mhm.
talk about the benefit of that and maybe give an example of a time when you did that?
Yeah. So I think we love our comfort zones. It's what makes us human. It's where we feel safe and we like to stay there. But I really think that like I started seeing a therapist this year, and she's like, "You're always reading nonfiction. You're so serious. You should go read fiction." And I went out and read The Alchemist. It's kind of a nonfiction. Some of my friends think it's nonfiction, but it's fiction. And that was just an example of me trying to understand like how um, like a fiction story, like even though on the surface level you think like, oh, it's like I historically have always thought like it doesn't have as much value to be added, like it's harder to write about this. Like I feel like nonfiction is really skimmable for me being dyslexic, like that I can just like skip to a chapter and not feel bad about missing half the book. um, so that's why I'm biased, but I think when you start to realize like how there's value in whatever you learn and that can transfer to any piece of content, it really shows like it helps me overcome my sunk cost fallacy of thinking like I'm letting myself down, I'm not doing what I think is the best value add of reading some like nonfiction book. But I think that it might be uncomfortable at first, but it helps you connect with a wider variety of people, and like just really it allows you to have more like shades to what your curiosity is, which I think is really powerful.
Great. I think that's all that I had. Was there anything else you wanted to add? Anything else you'd like to say to the class, Jen?
Um, I mean, I'm actually like flattered that you really like this blog. I can't believe I already wrote it like a year and a half ago. It feels like it was like a lifetime ago that I wrote this when I was cooped up in my parents' house, unemployed, and like really didn't know what I was trying to do in life. And like writing these essays has really like allowed me to understand like what it is I care about. So just create what you care about, and that showcases your values. And then if you feel like there's no point to it, just know that your future employer can read this content and they can understand better where your values are, who you are, what you care about. And we're all humans, so everyone wants to understand like what makes you human, and creating content gives you a competitive advantage against everyone else in the world who doesn't have any content, and it really can propel your career forward. So don't ever think that there's no point to it. There is a point, not only for the long term, but then also for if you find joy from it, and create a community of accountability to keep doing it, because it's not easy. I have a large community of friends who write newsletters, and we always are like each week, why do we do this? And then we do it and it's worth it. And I can't imagine life without doing it. So I really think if you just start, you'll never regret starting. You might fail, but that's a part of life and you'll learn from it, and then you can get back up again and just lean into your curiosity.
That's great.
Cool.
That made me think of one other thing. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, or is that a
Oh
paradigm that
gosh.
you even think within?
Yeah, I live like on a 6 month to 6 month basis currently, but if I were to say in 5 years, I would love to like be more of a teacher in life. I found that I really love writing because it's the simplest way of teaching anyone in the world something by sending them a link to something I wrote about. So I really want to 5 year plan be some sort of a teacher, mentor, coach in my life to find more of an active pursuit in helping people find their voices. Because I think I found my voice about a year ago. Took me a while, but I think I did, and it's been one of the most fulfilling things in my life to be able to feel like I know myself better. Um, So, a 5-year plan, it's not very specific. I'm pretty open-minded. Wherever the serendipity of the internet takes me, I'll go. So it's hard to really gauge what that is, but that's something I really find fulfilling. So maybe in that direction. But I'll get back to you in 5 years.
Okay, awesome.